Hello, everyone. Welcome to the National Sewing Circle's live Q&A. My name is Leah. I am your moderator, and you can see her already, but we'll officially introduce her in a moment. Nikki LaFoyle is over there ready to answer your questions with as much time as we have today. But before we jump in with Nikki, a couple reminders from me as usual. First, this is a Q&A. We want your questions, so you'll want to go ahead and check out the chat box. If you're viewing on the website, that's going to be right below your video player. And of course, you can use the chat if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube as well. Those questions will come in for Nikki, and we'll work our way through as many as we can today. The other thing is a fun summer project. We are revisiting something that we did last summer, and you can find your own link to this and get a free pattern and project for yourself by clicking the link in the description to a bomb pop zipper pouch. So if you're familiar with those bomb pops, red, white, and blue popsicles, they're a summer favorite, and there's a fantastic zipper pouch project for you to make. Get in a little bit of summer fun, and that is free for you to download just by clicking the link in the description. You can also drop just a little hello, let us know where it is you are watching from, and maybe if you've got any projects, any sewing projects that you would just like to share with the community, you can use the chat box for that as well, and that's what I'm here for. I'm going to keep an eye on all of those for you. Now, before we get to your questions, I said we would officially introduce her. Nikki LaFoyle is here to answer your questions. And Nikki, welcome. Thank you, as usual, for joining us. I would love to have you start out by giving us a little update, what you've been up to, any projects that you're excited to talk about, anything that's on your mind for this month. I'll give you the floor to start.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for showing up to chat sewing with us today. I'm always glad to be here. So sewing projects that I've got on my plate right now, I actually just made this. I'll give you a little quick preview because this is going to be a Facebook Live next week. So I'm making a wrap skirt. So if you can see, it kind of wraps around on the front. So you have that, sort of tulip opening almost on the front. And this is actually a rayon knit fabric. So it's very, drapey and very comfortable. And I'll be showing you how to take your own measurements and draw your own pattern and create that using any knit fabric. I'm actually going to be making this skirt next week on camera using a swim fabric. So it can be kind of a swim cover up. And it's not as scary as it seems to work with those really slinky knits. I'll be giving all kinds of tips for working with knit fabric, and you can even make this skirt with woven fabric if you want, and I'll be talking about what changes you have to do to the pattern to do that. So that was on my plate. I'm also thinking a lot about, if you're subscribed to the National Sewing Circle newsletter, you may have seen that we're going to Ireland in September. We're taking a group of people, and I'm going to be teaching a couple of sewing project classes while we're over there, and we're going to do a little tour around Ireland. So I'm super excited for that. I've been packaging up the projects, and I don't want to spoil anything, but we're going to be making a wall hanging and doing some hand embroidery, and we'll be making a little shamrock pin cushion, and I'm just super, super excited about that. So that's been on my mind a lot. And of course, I always seem to be hemming lots of pants for some reason, especially in the summer. My dad is always giving me pants to shorten or turn into shorts. So that's another thing that's, constantly coming through my sewing room. So that's what I've been up to.
Well, thank you for sharing. We will, of course, give you an opportunity at the end to shout out those upcoming projects as well, again, Nikki. But we're going to move into questions. We've got a couple already coming in, and we're going to start with Casey's. So Casey is looking to buy her first serger. Casey says, I sew vintage girls' dresses and need a professional look. Also does a lot of ruffles. So Casey's needing advice on a brand and model. Can't spend the big bucks, but the budget goes up to $650. Do you have some recommendations for Casey?
So as far as a serger, I don't have any specific recommendations because I have a brother serger up in my attic, but it stays in the closet because I don't have room in my sewing room to have my sewing machine and a serger set up. So I don't really use a serger. But if anybody watching has recommendations for a serger that you use and love, please drop those into the comment section. However, I know a serger, I do believe sergers have a ruffle attachment, but I think you can have a ruffle attachment for your sewing machine as well. And again, I've never used one of those, but I've seen videos about them, a little attachment that sort of pulls up the fabric and creates ruffles for you. So that's an option. But if you do want to buy a serger, I know they sew faster than a regular sewing machine. So if you're making a lot of projects and you're, kind of streamlining the process, a serger can be super helpful and do a lot of things faster and easier for you, because it does finish those seam allowances for you as you're stitching. So I know a lot of people love that all in one go, just sewn and finished all in one. So I'm partial to Pfaff sewing machines. I've not, like I said, I'm not really well versed in sergers, but I know Pfaff does just great. They make great products. This is the Pfaff Passport 2.0, the sewing machine that I've been sewing on for a lot of years, like 10 years now, I think. And it does everything I need it to do. I think the Passport 2.0 runs like 600 or 700. So last time I checked, I don't know anymore what the prices are, but so it's about that level of product. But I know Pfaff, they make products in different price ranges. So you can check the website, the Pfaff website. You can check, the Brother website, Singer website, and kind of look around at different serger models and what they offer. But this is kind of the same thing as when people ask me what sewing machine to buy. I always recommend going somewhere where you can get your hands on it and actually kind of test drive it. That's the best way to get a feel for what it can do and how comfortable you'll be with it. So if that's an option for you to go somewhere and test drive some, that's always a great option. Or you can also look around online and look for reviews. Reviews are super, super helpful. And I always encourage people to leave reviews on their machines, especially if you have bought them online, to help other sewists, share the knowledge and help other sewists make their choices. But I see we have some people who have put in what sergers they have. A 1034D serger, which is a Brother serger. And actually someone else also said they have the Brother 1034. And that person is a newbie and it works great for them. So that's a good place to start, to looking into that one. And you can a lot of times find these things online and see what they come with and what bells and whistles they have, if any, and make sure that it'll do everything that you want it to do.
All right, and I think I've got a kind of an off connection here. Can you still hear me there?
I can, yes.
Oh, I got you back. All right, perfect. Keep those suggestions coming. If anyone else has sergers that you like, definitely drop those into the chat box and we will continue to shout those out as well. I'm going to jump to Gigi's question next. Gigi wants to know, what is the best method to ensure even stitches when you're top stitching around a curve on a quilted project, like a pot holder, a bag, or a coaster? What suggestions do you have?
So when top stitching, to make sure your top stitching is even, so there's a foot called a top stitching foot that you can attach to your machine, and it has like a little edge to it that you can adjust to hit at the edge of the fabric. So that way, as long as you keep the edge of your fabric along the edge of that foot kind of flange that sticks out, you'll know that your needle will always be, the correct distance away from the edge. And if you bump your stitch length up when you're top stitching, this does a couple things. A longer stitch length when top stitching just looks nicer, in my opinion. It gives a better pop, but also a longer stitch length, it makes it a little bit easier to get a nice smooth line. So a longer stitch length, you can try that top stitching foot. If you don't have a top stitching foot, you can put a line of like painter's tape on the bed of your machine. And this can also help you get just straight lines of stitching, whether you're doing construction stitches or top stitches. A line of painter's tape on the bed of your machine for you to line up the edge of your fabric with. I've also seen some people, they stack little pieces of cardboard and stick those to the bed of the machine, so you have something for the edge of the fabric to actually butt up against. So it's a little bit more of a visual thing, instead of, you know, just a line of tape where the edge of the fabric could kind of slide over it and cover it. If you have something sticking up, it's just kind of easier to tell when the fabric runs up alongside of it. So those are some tricks that you can try to help yourself get nice, smooth top stitching.
Okay, well, thank you for that. As always, let us know if there's any follow-up that you want Nikki to talk more about, and I will keep an eye on the chat box. Before we get to our next question, we've got a couple hellos that have come in. Afaf is from Egypt, but is watching in the USA. And it looks like we've got some questions. Anybody else watching from the USA? Where are you watching from? We want to know. It's always nice to build a little bit of community while we're here live with all of our sewists. So don't be hesitant. Don't be shy about dropping in a hello. We are going to jump to our next question here from Carly. Nikki, this is a good one. It kind of jumps back to the project you were highlighting right at the top of the hour. So Carly asks if you have a good swimsuit cover-up pattern. So I'll let you talk a little bit about that project, and of course, any other pattern suggestions that you have as well.
Yeah, so as far as, I don't know any like specific patterns from like the big pattern companies, but next week, if you want to tune in on Facebook, on the National Sewing Circle Facebook page, it's not like a full cover up. This is just sort of like a skirt cover up, but it's designed to be a swim cover up. I'm using swim fabric next week to make it. This is a rayon French terry, which has French terry has like loops on the wrong side. So it's actually quite absorbent, which is good for summer days, whether it's a swim cover up or just because it's hot and humid up here in Michigan, and kind of sweaty. But I'll be teaching you how to do that on the Facebook page Tuesday, the 19th. So you can tune into that. But I've actually also seen, this was going around on Pinterest forever, but a swim cover up that was just like a rectangle of fabric with loops on the upper corners, and you would wrap it around from the back and use the loops as the sleeves. So essentially just like one big rectangle of fabric to loop around, and it would kind of like drape down in the back a little bit, but it kind of crossed over in the front. And I always thought that was kind of neat. Would be a super easy, quick project to do. You could do it in a knit fabric, so you wouldn't even have to, you know, hem any of the edges technically. You could just attach some loops to the edges of a rectangle and wrap it around, and, you know, boom, you have a swim cover up in like 5 minutes. So that's a fun one. I think I saw it on Pinterest, but that's as far as swim cover-ups go, and like, you know, McCall's or Simplicity or Butterick or anything, I don't have any specific swim cover-up patterns to recommend, but some quick little things that you can do.
Great starting points. I'm very glad I asked for some hellos. We've got people from all over, Nikki. We've got Inez watching from Puerto Rico. We've got Sabina in Argentina, Shirley from Texas, Lisan from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Sandra's in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So we have people from all over watching and asking questions here today. So I love this about our community. Keep the questions coming. Also, let us know if there's any summer projects that you're working on. Even if you don't need a question answered, let us know what's going on in the community. It always gives, I know Nikki and everybody else that's involved with our talent, ideas for projects and things that you might all want to see coming up. Like Nikki talked about next week, her Facebook Live. She's always looking for more inspiration, I know. So let us know what you're into and interested in, and we will keep an eye out. All right, got a big long one coming at you next, Nikki.
All right.
So this comes from James. James says, I have some casual button front, long sleeve shirts that are too big for my slim frame. I'm not concerned about messing them up, so figure they'll be a good one to first try alterations on. My main question is, what is the best way to handle the double needle seams? Should I take out the original seams, or will it work to clip or pin, mark the lines, and then cut with a hem allowance and re-sew with a double needle? What do you think about a situation like that?
Yes, I think so. If you are taking the shirt in enough that you're just essentially going to be resewing the entire seam on the sides, you can just zip up whatever new side seam you want. You don't have to necessarily do that flat felled or the double needle seam that is originally done. If you are, okay, hem allowance with the double needle. Okay, so on the hem, you can do the hem whatever way you want. It's totally up to you as far as an aesthetic thing. If you want to sort of mimic that double needle, like factory made finish, you can definitely cut off that hem allowance wherever you want the new hem allowance to be, double fold your hem, and then stitch that with a double needle. That's typically how I do hems, because that double needle, when it's done in the factory, it's typically using a cover stitch machine, but it's just 2 lines of straight stitching on the right side of the fabric, and you can mimic that with the double needle on your regular sewing machine at home. So I think it's kind of hard to answer without seeing what alterations are being done, but yes, you can resew that hem with a double needle after you trim and cut wherever you are altering your shirt. And it's a great place to start on shirts that you don't really care if you mess up. You can trial and error is a great way to learn.
Yes, just take notes of what works and what doesn't seem to work. All right, we have a couple more hellos that have dropped in all the way from British Columbia. We have Dar. We've got a couple more US viewers in North Carolina in Treva, and John is in Ohio. So welcome to everybody that is joining us. We're getting as many questions to Nikki as we can get through in the time we have available. So keep them coming in. We're going to move right along into our next one, Nikki. This one comes from Cynthia. And Cynthia wants to know how to keep the needle from getting gunked up when using fusible seam tape.
So when using fusible seam tape, so I don't typically use that, but I know when you are using something that has adhesive on it, so if you're sewing on a Velcro that's adhesive back Velcro, or if you're using spray adhesive, basting or something, anything that's got that adhesive on it, you run the risk of, when you're running your needle through it, some of that transferring onto your needle. And it shouldn't gunk up your needle so much that it makes it hard to work with. Sometimes though, these adhesive products, if they are old, or if if it's really hot or humid or something, it might sort of activate that glue and transfer that onto your needle. So what you can do is take a cotton ball dipped in rubbing alcohol, and if you start seeing the fabric having a hard time, or that needle having a hard time sort of going through the fabric, and the fabric having a hard time releasing from the needle because of that adhesive, you can rub that rubbing alcohol from the cotton ball on the needle to kind of clean off that gunk and keep at it, and just keep that rubbing alcohol cotton ball on a plate or something next to your sewing machine. Clean it off when you need to. I've also heard titanium needles maybe might, the adhesive might not stick to that type of needle as much. So if it becomes a huge problem, you could try that type of needle. But if it's just, a minor annoyance that it's sort of, making your fabric have a hard time going through under the needle, you can try that rubbing alcohol trick first, and hopefully that'll take care of the problem.
All right. Oh, we've got a couple hellos coming in from Florida. Angie is in Florida, and so is Gail. Gail has another shout out. We were talking about Sergers a little bit earlier. It looks like Gail has all baby lock. She's still learning the Serger, and it's a triumph. And I know somebody else in here also shouted out baby lock. It's our username BearCC41. So someone else out there is with baby lock as well. We were talking about Sergers at the beginning of the hour. I believe it was one of our first questions. So if you have a brand that you like, definitely keep those suggestions coming. I know people out there that are looking would appreciate the input. I'm going to go ahead and Nikki, I'm going to give you a little chance here kind of midway through to, especially for people that weren't with us at the top of the hour, as some more questions come in, give us a little sneak preview of what's coming up next for you on Facebook Live, and also maybe talk a little bit about how you come up with some of these projects that you are going to be taking to even further in the future Facebook Lives, things that maybe you're noodling around, and any questions you have for the audience as to what you'd like to hear from them. So I'll give you the floor for a minute or two.
Yeah, totally. So Facebook Lives on the National Sewing Circle Facebook page, if you are not subscribed to that, you can click, I think, the thumbs up button on the National Sewing Circle Facebook page, and then that'll show up on your feed, and you'll see me on there every couple of weeks, and Katrina Walker is on there doing great tips and projects. And they're free videos that are there for you to go back to whenever you want. And oftentimes, at least for mine, because I do a lot of projects, you'll get a PDF with the full instructions as well. So I write up the instructions for all my projects. And the one next week, I'll show it again because I love this fabric. This is a wrap skirt that I'm going to make next Tuesday, the 19th. And it's a knit skirt. And actually this is a rayon French terry, super comfortable and just breezy and wonderful to wear. And I got this rayon French terry from knitfabric.com. I've gotten a bunch of knit fabrics from them, and they have a ton of different weights and fiber contents. I've made sweatshirts with fabric from there, and I'm making this swim skirt with swim fabric from knitfabric.com as well, because I like that they give you the weight of the fabric in their fabric descriptions. Super important to know the weight of your fabric so you know what you're getting, instead of just a general lightweight or midweight or heavyweight fabric, there's a huge range in there. So I'm making that skirt next week. Tune in, and we'll be doing that live, so you can ask me any questions as we're going along that tutorial. We'll be taking your own measurements and drawing your own pattern, and it's really easy and simple as well. And you don't have to do it in knit fabric. I'll tell you how to do it in a woven as well. So as far as coming up with ideas for Facebook Lives, it's kind of seasonal. Like this is swim cover up skirt is a great summer project. And a lot of times I look around on Pinterest for things that are cute and fun. But I also, I'm kind of tapped in on the National Sewing Circle on their website. They let me know what people are interested in, kind of. And so I get some ideas from that. People will say, oh, I want more garment projects or home deck projects. So I go back to that list a lot and see what people are asking for. But if there's anything, you've got a direct line to me right now. If there's anything you guys want to see, anything specific in terms of projects for Facebook Lives, I'm all ears. Whether it's just general, alterations or home deck or something very specific, I would love to hear that from you. So feel free to type those in. And also, since I have the floor, I wanted to say, in addition to going to Ireland in September with National Sewing Circle, we're also going on another trip in the end of November, beginning of December to Germany to visit the Christmas markets. And I'll be going on that trip as well and teaching another couple of projects. And then we're just kind of traveling around an area in Germany. And they have a huge, Christmas market there. It's just a huge thing there. So that's going to be super fun to see. So you can go on nationalsewingcircle.com. I think there's some information about it there, but it's through Craft Tours. So crafttours.com. And the trip is, I think, on that website as well. But if you're not signed up for the National Sewing Circle newsletter, you can go on nationalsewingcircle.com and sign up for that. And I know they're going to start pushing the Germany trip a little bit more to get it out there and give people a chance to sign up for it. So,
oh, those are exciting things to think about coming up in the future. I love that. All right, we've got a couple questions that came in while you were talking through, so we'll begin working our way through those. John has a question. John also sent in a comment. So John, if you're still watching, I think I know what you mean by this, but let me know if I get it wrong. So John's first comment is, to close up a stuffed animal, what stitch would you suggest to use so it's not seen? And then the following comment just says, working with Shannon Minky. So I'm thinking maybe that's the material that we're working with here with this specific stuffed animal, but let me know if I've got that wrong, John.
Okay, yes, that sounds right. So if you have made anything, stuffed animal or a purse or whatever, if you want to close up your opening and have the thread hidden, you want to use a slip stitch. It's also called a ladder stitch. And so your opening, you'll have your seam allowances, turned under in your opening, and you want your hand sewing needle to go from the top of the fold over to the top of the fold. And so you're just kind of taking a little bite of a stitch from the top of the fold of one side of the opening, and then you go across, just straight across where that needle thread came out, and start your stitch on the other side. It's not up on the nationalsewingcircle.com website yet, but I did a video on how to do the slip stitch, and it should be coming along the pipeline shortly, so you can check back there, or you can Google how to do the slip stitch, hand slip stitch or ladder stitch, and you'll be able to get a good visual on it. But that's a good invisible stitch, and you can do it with a hand sewing needle and thread. Close up any openings you want, tie off your thread at the end to hide your knots, and tuck the end of your thread kind of down in between your stitches, kind of, and it'll be nice and invisible, and everything will be all closed up.
All right, perfect. And it does look like that indeed was what John meant. So thank you for helping clarify that, John. Anya says, hi from Belgium. So again, finding different viewers from all over the world. This is very exciting. Keep your questions coming. We've got quite a few of them to get through here. We're going to do Pauline's question next. So Pauline is making a pleated skirt and wants to know how to make the lines or the pleats go all the way down to the bottom of the skirt.
So if you want those folds to continue from the top of the skirt all the way down to the bottom, you can press the daylights out of that fabric. If it's a fabric that will allow steam, you can use, I've never really been one to use spray starch, but I know it's a thing. It's a product, that will help the fabric sort of hold its shape. So you could look into that. And yeah, just give it good presses. And I don't know how well that those pleats would hold through like washing. You might have to repress. But that's your best bet to make that fabric hold those pleats and still be, a free-flowing skirt at the bottom. So that would be my best suggestion, is maybe some spray starch and lots of time with the iron.
Best of luck with those pleats indeed. All right, let's move on to Tana's question next. So Tana's looking for something pretty specific, looking for a fabric that can be used for a sunshade at a camper, essentially big blinds. So what was previously being used was a black tarp with grommets, but her mother-in-law is looking for something prettier. It should be fade resistant, waterproof, and able to be in the elements for a while. So it'll be used on a deck. When it is sunny, it is rolled down to basically become outdoor blinds. What kind of fabric would you suggest for those specific needs?
So you can do a general search for outdoor fabrics. And there's even, I was in Hobby Lobby the other day, and they even had like a small section of bolts of outdoor fabric, but you'll have a bigger selection if you look online. So outdoor fabrics are often more durable, and they often have like a weatherproofing finish to help keep the colors from fading. So Sunbrella is the name brand that comes to mind, but those fabrics have everything that I just mentioned: durable, weatherproofing, UV kind of resistant, so that the fabrics or the colors won't fade as quickly. So that's, let's see, I just was trying to find the website for you. I guess Sunbrella fabrics are sold in a bunch of different online retailers. So you can do your search for outdoor fabrics, or you can search specifically for Sunbrella. But those fabrics would be good. I've also heard, let's see if I can remember this, the fabrics that are used, let's see, for like boat covers, so like marine fabrics even have that extra durability against the elements, water and wind and UV. So I don't know if that would be like maritime fabrics, or I'm trying to Google search and see if anything comes up from that. That might just give us like sailboat prints and stuff. So Sunbrella or outdoor fabrics, I think, would be a good place to start. And they have a ton of different prints and colors, so you can find something pretty to, jazz up your sunshade for your camper.
That sounds like a perfect way to start. Maybe some sailboat patterns on the outdoor fabrics. Who knows?
Thank you.
We've got another Floridian viewing. Hello to Eldrick from Florida. I think out of all of the places, we've got most of our viewers that have shouted out Florida right now. So if you want to bump up some of the other locations, send us a hello. Let us know where you're viewing from. Love to see it. We've got a couple more questions here in line. This one coming from Anne seems to be for anybody that's viewing, but I am also going to pose it to Nikki. Does anyone, including Nikki, do you rip your fabric to square it up?
I have done that quite a bit, yes, and that works for woven fabrics. A plain weave fabric is, the easiest to do it on. You clip through the selvage and then tear, and it'll tear along the, along the grain. So if that fabric was, cut wonky from the fabric store or whatever, you can square it up and find your true grain. And typically after I cut and tear, then I like to press the edge as well, because when you tear it, it sort of makes the edge kind of ripple a little bit. So I like to then press it to get it nice and flat. But some weaves that won't really work on if the weave is a little bit tighter, or like a twill weave, you won't be able to tear it. But for quilting cottons, it's an easy way to find your true straight grain. But obviously you won't be able to do it on like knit fabrics or anything, but your quilting cottons, for sure. That's the way that I actually learned when I was going to college for apparel design. One of my teachers showed me that trick, and yeah, it works really well. And it's great because sometimes you will find either when the fabric gets like wrapped on the bolt, or somebody isn't paying attention at Joann Fabrics and they cut something kind of wonky. You always want to double check when you get that fabric home that you actually have the straight edge.
Perfect. So we've got one vote from Nikki of yes, you have done that. If anybody else has experience with that, go ahead and let us know. If there's any other rippers out there to square up your fabrics. Let's see. Let's go to Nessa's question next. This is a little bit on the topic that we started out with, but a slightly different machine. So Nessa is just starting out a sewing journey. So welcome. Nessa says, I have weird body proportions and I'd like to alter clothes first. So maybe eventually start with making my own patterns. Now, the question, or making my own with patterns. Nessa's question is, what would be a good beginner sewing machine? So of course, crowdsource this. If you have suggestions out there as viewers, let us know. But Nikki, if you want to talk a little bit more about that process that you recommend for starting out looking for your first machine.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and yes, welcome Nessa to the sewing community. We're so glad to have you. It's such a fun journey to be on. And yeah, altering clothes or even making your own clothes, that's why I wanted to get into sewing, because it's so much fun. So as far as a beginner machine, I was talking a little bit earlier about the importance of being able to test drive a machine to get a feel for it and see if it does everything you want it to do. But that said, I don't have the luxury of doing that. I live in a pretty rural area, so there are not sewing machine dealers around me. So I have to rely on reviews and rely on just online research, and asking people. You ask friends and family who have experience with sewing machines. So my first machine, which was a very low budget machine because I was in high school, was the Brother CS6000i. And a lot of people that I have talked to said that that was their first machine too, because it was, at least back in the day, it was like $80. And it has straight stitch, zigzag stitch, a couple buttonhole stitches, and a whole pile of decorative stitches that I never really used. All I needed was straight stitch, zigzag, and a buttonhole for the garments that I was making. And it did everything that I needed it to, and it served me well until I decided, I wanted to go a step up, and upgraded my machine. I think I got another Brother after that. I don't remember the exact number, model of that, but then I graduated to my FOF Passport 2.0, which is a little bit pricier, but is, just great for, I even take it traveling with me. So it's heavy duty, heavier than the Brother machines that I had, but it's not so heavy that I can't lug it around with me. And it is just smooth sewing, does everything I need it to and more. But for a beginner, if you don't want to drop, $500, $600, $700 on a machine. I would suggest looking at the Brother machines because they do seem to have a lot of those budget machines. So the CS6000i, that would be my recommendation just based on my past experience with it. If anybody else has any suggestions for Nessa, feel free to type them in, but check out the Brother machines. They're good and good for your budget too.
All right, I'm going to take a quick jump back to the ripping of fabric that we just talked about. John's got a good question here about that. Will doing that make the fabric lose its stretch to tear it? And it looks like there's a nice little emoji in there that I have not seen before. But do you want to talk about that? Are there any risks involved like that?
So like I said, you won't be able to do the tear thing for knit fabrics. It just wouldn't work and you would stretch it and not get anywhere. But for a woven fabric, as long as you're tearing on the straight grain, it won't stretch out the threads at all. You don't want to try, tearing it, kitty corner on the bias because it won't tear and you're just going to kind of mangle the fabric a little bit. So as long as you cut, relatively perpendicular to the selvage for your cut and then tear, you'll be, it'll tear along a thread. So it'll tear along the grain and those threads, because they're, going straight across and they are whatever cotton, polyester, whatever fiber it is, they're not going to stretch. So it won't stretch it out of shape or anything. Like I said, the edges might get a little bit ripply, which is why I like to take the iron and press it afterward, but it's not going to stretch it out of whack or anything. So it'll be safe for your fabric.
All right, we are going to keep rolling with questions, but as I look at the clock, it is time for me to put in my final reminder in because the time really starts to fly here towards the tail end. If you're sitting on a question for Nikki and you haven't asked it yet, go ahead and drop it into the chat box now so that we can get to it before we have to say goodbye today. We do like to get as many as possible in. With that reminder from me, we're going to dive right into the next question here. And this one comes from Leanne. Welcome to the world of when we are makers, you have to think ahead. So Leanne's going to take us all the way to the next holiday season. She is already working on Christmas gifts. So Nikki, do you have any idea for gift projects, people that are kind of getting ahead of schedule here and really starting to work for those gifts for later on in the year?
Yeah. So yeah, when you are making your gifts, you do have to think quite a bit ahead. So as far as Christmas gifts, so it's kind of personal to the person, of course, and Pinterest is a huge wealth of inspiration that I always go back to when I'm, making things for people or doing projects for National Sewing Circle. So you can noodle around on there some, but something that's kind of fun to do for gift giving is to make your own packaging as well. So you can make little gift bags with, if you have some fun Christmassy fabric and some fun, ribbons that you can make for handles, you can make essentially little tote bags for whatever gift you're giving. And then in addition to whatever is inside of the bag, then the bag is also kind of part of the gift and they can reuse it for, giving another gift or reuse it for whatever. There's always a use for a bag. So that's kind of a fun thing to do. Other than that, scarves are always a nice gift, especially in the winter time. And not only knit scarves, but there are so many, like I think John mentioned before, the minky fabric is so soft and just lush, and you can make blankets with it, but a scarf would be really nice out of that fabric as well, and it would just feel so nice against your skin and nice and warm. So bags and scarves, little coin purses are always kind of a cute gift, especially if you have a fun fabric that you can find that would speak to the person you're giving the gift to. And there are a ton of little project ideas on nationalsewingcircle.com as well. And I think it was a million years ago that I worked for Sew It All TV, but we always had our project instructions listed on the website, so sewitalltv.com. And Sew It All, the magazine and the PBS TV show, was geared toward beginners. So they're quick and easy projects. So you can check out sewitallmag.com or sewitalltv.com and see if we have, the instructions are still up there. But yeah, little projects like that, like coin purses or, zipper pouches or anything. The addition of a zipper makes the making of the thing take a little bit longer, but it also makes it kind of extra special because of it. Hardware in any shape or form makes a thing look a little bit more professional and a little more impressive. So zipper pouches are kind of a fun gift to give as well. But yeah, good luck with the gift making. It is a very lucky thing for your friends and family to be able to receive handmade gifts from you. So well done.
All right, I'm going to take the opportunity, since you were talking about zipper pouches, to remind everybody, especially those of you that weren't with us at the very beginning, there is a link in the description of today's video to a Bomb Pop zipper pouch. Now, this is a summer project. This isn't for the winter, but making the zipper pouch, that is a tutorial that you can take and use that skill for other pouches, other projects that you would like to build on. And of course, if you just want something fun for the summer, get that Bomb Pop project. Again, that link is in the description of the video, so you can find that on the page and dig into that after the Q&A is over. Before I get to our next question, John has put in a suggestion, I believe, for anyone that's looking for their first sewing machine. So the suggestion here is find somebody in the area that you can do the repairs if you need to bring it back. So that's a great suggestion. But then, Nikki, I want to give you a chance to talk. You mentioned you're not so lucky that you can go somewhere and test things out. For anybody that might struggle to find a repair shop that's local, what happens if your sewing machine needs some attention, some TLC? What can you suggest?
The internet is a wonderful and scary place, but you can do a little, troubleshooting on your own to figure out whatever issue you're having. But I'm sure that there are services where you can ship your machine to, and that's conjecture on my part, but that's got to be a service, because I know there are a lot of us who live in rural areas and who might need that service. So you can look into that, a Google search for either, sewing machine repair near me, or sewing machine repair, shipping sewing machine repair, something like that. I think would probably turn up some results.
Okay. Thank you for speaking to that a little bit. That's really helpful, I'm sure, for people that aren't in the vicinity of a nearby shop. All right, this is our last question that we have right now. I will keep an eye out for any last minute ones that pop in, but this might be our last question of today. This comes from Becca T. So Becca wants to sew some ribbon across the bottom of a skirt, but the skirt is pleated. Will this ruin the pleats? Do you have any tips to keep those pleats intact, but still attaching the ribbon? For example, maybe fabric glue? Thank you.
So if you wanted to add ribbon to the bottom of the skirt, I do think it would make it harder for the fabric to keep the pleat fold. It might make it want to, come apart a little bit. Would probably give it a little bit more volume. But this just occurred to me for the person who is asking about pleats a little bit previously. What you could do is you could top stitch the edge of each pleat. So just a tiny little, like pin tuck almost, zip a little line of stitching down the edge of each pleat, which would help hold that fold in place. and it would even add a little bit of weight to the fabric to sort of help hold it down and help it to hang down nicely. So you could try that not only on the outside, but maybe even on the inside of the pleat as well. And that way it would hold the pleats nicely, and you could probably even add that ribbon to the bottom and zip that little, I don't want to call it a pin tuck, 'cause it's not a pin tuck, but a little line of stitching holding the edge of that pleat in place all the way down through the ribbon, and it would help that fold stay in place, in addition to some ironing. But I think that actually would work pretty well to hold those pleats.
Okay, pleats were a very popular topic today. Awesome. Well, that was the last question that we had in the chat box. So that brings us to the end of our Q&A today. Before we leave, one quick reminder from me. I said it before, but if you haven't already checked it out, the link to that Bomb Pop zipper pouch, say it 3 times fast and then you can download it. That project is available for you in the video description of today's Q&A. Go ahead and click on that. It's a free pattern. It's a fun summer project. Have a little bit of fun with that. I'm going to turn it over to Nikki. Nikki, if you could let us go with a reminder of where to find you next, the upcoming project that you have on Facebook Live, and anything else you want to send us off with in terms of final thoughts, I will send it over to you.
Yeah, so on Tuesday, the 19th, on the National Sewing Circle Facebook page, the video will be just on Facebook, and you can click and watch live at 2 o'clock, I think. It'll be promoted on the Facebook page before we go live. I'd have to check my calendar to see what time, but you can also, it's nice to watch live because you can ask me whatever you want, but you can also go back and watch that video whenever. It'll be on the Facebook page, and we're making this cute wrap skirt, whether you want to use it as a swim cover up or just a skirt. I'm making it in a knit fabric, but like I said, you can do it in a woven if you want. We'll talk about how to make those alterations to your pattern, which you will measure yourself and draw your own pattern. And skirts are a great beginner project too. And this skirt especially, because it's got so much, it's very forgiving. It's a forgiving pattern because you have that wrap across the front, and you can use your ties to, pull it a little tighter if you want. And knit fabric is also quite forgiving in terms of fit as well. But if you're not super comfortable using knit fabric, actually, you should probably tune in to the video, because I'll give a ton of tips for sewing with knit fabrics, where to buy your knit fabrics. Like I got this cute sort of like acid wash tie-dye fabric from knitfabric.com. So I'll talk about all things knit fabric, and we'll go through the tutorial. So that is next Tuesday on the National Sewing Circle Facebook page. And because it seemed like we had a couple of beginner sewers joining us today, I will say, when you're starting to learn how to sew, it is so exciting. And at least for me, and I still do this sometimes, I jump in with both feet before like fully getting my plan in place. So I always recommend for beginners to take it slow and take it step by step, just bite by bite. Start with like the easiest project you possibly can. Straight lines, straight cuts. A simple pillowcase is a good place to start, or like a rectangular scarf, napkins or something that you're just hemming straight lines on the straight grain to get a feel for your machine and how everything works, and then graduate up to something a little bit more challenging, curves maybe. But don't jump right into knit fabrics as your first sewing project, because there's a lot that's different about knit fabric, and you need to kind of build up to it, and don't jump in with zippers, or don't jump in with buttonholes. That's something that you build up to. NationalSewingCircle.com, of course, is a great resource for a bunch of different techniques and tips, and you can get inspiration and ideas for projects and a whole bunch of tips to help your sewing go smoothly. But something that I also recommend for new sewers is to buy a fabric that you will be excited about working with. So I know, sometimes you're on a budget, but the fabric that you choose can make a huge difference in the finished product. And you want to have a finished product that you love and you're proud of, and that makes you, excited to do more sewing. So especially for your first couple of projects, it is important to have some, muslin fabric or fabric that you don't really care about to kind of practice on. But for projects, it's always fun. For me, it's, half of the fun of a project is going into the fabric store and just touching everything and, choosing the fabric that you're going to use. So give yourself permission to buy the beautiful fabric that speaks to you and makes you excited for sewing. And and just have fun with it.
That's a really great tip to leave on today, Nikki. Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody for watching. Thank you for sending in your questions. And of course, again, thank you to Nikki for all of the fantastic expertise. Like she said, check her out on the next Facebook Live, and she will be back sometime next month. We do these about once a month for more question and answer. So if you didn't have a question answered today, come back another time, ask that question, and we'll be talking more things sewing with Nikki in the future. Of course, until then, thank you again for joining us today. Happy sewing, and we will see you the next time.